The unlikely encounter Jack Rivers sat in his cargo ship. Staring at the empty stars around him, his hands shook as he checked the fuel gauge again. Knowing it was almost empty, lost in deep space, Jack had not seen another ship or planet for days. The silence inside the ship felt heavy. Pressing on his chest, Jack closed his eyes and tried to remember Earth, the blue sky, the sound of waves. But now, there was only darkness and the cold hum of the engines. He reached for his last protein bar, breaking it in half to make it last longer. Jack knew he would not survive much longer if help did not come soon. He wondered if anyone would ever know what happened to him. Suddenly, the ship's computer beeped, pulling Jack from his thoughts. A signal appeared on the screen, weak but real, a distress call. Jack's heart raced as he pressed the button to listen. The message was broken, filled with static and strange alien sounds. But he heard something like a cry, a child's voice, lost and afraid. Jack hesitated, knowing it could be a trap. But he could not ignore the call for help. He set the ship's course toward the source of the signal. The journey took hours, and Jack used the time to prepare. He loaded his old blaster just in case. He remembered the stories about pirates and hostile aliens in this part of space. As he got closer, Jack saw a small silver escape pod floating alone. It spun slowly, as if waiting for someone to find it. Jack's ship docked with the pod, and he opened the airlock. The inside of the pod was cold and dark. Jack's flashlight revealed shattered glass, spilled supplies, and a single figure. Curled up in the corner was a small, blue-skinned girl. Her eyes were wide with fear, glowing softly in the darkness. She looked up at Jack, trembling, and whispered something in a language he didn't know. Jack tried to calm her, keeping his voice gentle. He knelt down and offered her water. The girl stared at him, unsure. Jack could see her hands shaking as she reached for the bottle. He noticed marks on her arms, bruises and scratches. Someone had hurt her, or maybe she had escaped something terrible. "Are you alone?" Jack asked softly. The girl blinked, then nodded, tears running down her cheeks. Jack's heart ached for her. He wondered how long she had been drifting in space. Suddenly, she whispered a single word in broken English. "Dad." Jack froze. Surprised, he had never been a father, never even wanted children, but in that moment, he saw how desperate and lost she was. She needed someone, anyone, to care for her. Jack's old memories of his childhood flashed in his mind. He remembered being scared and alone. Wishing for someone to help, Jack gently picked up the girl and carried her to his ship. He wrapped her in a blanket and gave her some food. She ate quickly, afraid the food might disappear. Jack sat beside her, watching her carefully. He knew nothing about her or her world, but he promised himself he would protect her. For the first time in days, Jack did not feel completely alone. There was someone who needed him. He tried to talk to her. Using simple words and hand signs, slowly, she began to relax. Jack learned her name was Lyra. She said it softly, pointing to herself. Jack smiled and repeated her name. She managed a small, nervous smile back. But Jack knew their problems were not over. The signal from the escape pod could attract danger. He checked his scanners and saw a blip. Another ship was nearby. Jack's heart pounded. He did not know if it was friend or foe. He decided to leave quickly. Firing up the engines, Jack set a course away from the signal, deeper into unknown space. He glanced at Lyra, who now sat beside him in the co-pilot seat. She clung to the blanket, eyes wide. With fear and hope, Jack reached over and squeezed her hand. He was not sure what would happen next, but he knew one thing. He was not going to leave her alone, no matter what waited for them in the stars. Jack Rivers stared at the alien child sitting quietly in the corner of his small ship. The engines hummed softly as the stars outside drifted by. Lyra, the blue-skinned girl, held the blanket close. Watching Jack with big, worried eyes, Jack tried to smile at her, but he felt awkward, unsure of what to do next. He had never taken care of a child, let alone an alien one. He wondered if she was still afraid, or if she trusted him at all. Jack made some food. Using what little supplies he had left, he handed a small piece of bread to Lyra. She looked at it, sniffed it carefully, and then took a tiny bite. He remembered how hungry she had been in the escape pod. Jack felt a strange mix of worry and responsibility. He watched as Lyra finished her food and then curled up to sleep on the small bunk. Her breathing was soft and her face finally seemed peaceful. Jack walked to the cockpit and sat down. He checked the radar again, hoping the mysterious ship had not followed them. The screen showed only empty space. For now, Jack let out a long breath, feeling the tension in his shoulders relax. Just a little, but deep inside, he knew they were not safe yet. Someone had attacked Lyra's ship and left her to drift alone, whoever they were. They might come looking for her again. As the hours passed, Jack tried to rest, but sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about the little girl, about her. Calling him Dad, he wondered what had happened to her real family. Why was she alone? And why had she called out for help in the darkness of space when morning came? Jack found Lyra sitting in the cockpit. She stared out the window, her small hands pressed against the glass. Jack sat beside her, trying to start a conversation. He spoke slowly, using simple English, hoping she would understand. "My name is Jack," he said. Pointing to himself, she nodded and repeated softly, "Jack." Then she pointed to herself and said, "Lyra." Jack smiled, feeling a little hope. He tried to ask her about her family. Lyra looked down, her face sad. She mumbled a few words in her own language, then shook her head. Jack could tell she did not want to talk about it, so he tried something different. He drew a picture of his home on a piece of paper, a small house, a tree, and a dog. Lyra watched him carefully. She took the pencil and drew something to a strange shape, like a tall tower under 3 moons. Jack realized it must be her home, far away on another planet. He pointed to her drawing and said, "Home." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with tears. Jack wanted to comfort her, but he did not know how. He put a hand gently on her shoulder, and Lyra did not pull away. For a moment, they sat together, sharing a silent understanding. Jack promised himself he would help her, no matter what it took. Later, Jack checked the ship's food supply. He knew it would not last much longer. Especially with another mouth to feed, he needed to find a safe place to land and get supplies. But he also knew they had to stay hidden. Whoever had attacked Lyra's ship could still be searching. Jack set the navigation for a quiet, uninhabited moon he remembered from his old star charts. It was far from the main trade routes, the perfect place to hide for a while. As they traveled, Jack showed Lyra how the ship worked. He let her press buttons and even steer for a few seconds. Lyra smiled shyly, enjoying the new experience. Jack realized how smart she was. She learned fast, copying his actions and remembering everything. Sometimes she would say a new English word, proud of herself. Jack cheered her on, happy to see her smile. But the peaceful time did not last. The ship's warning alarm suddenly beeped. Jack jumped to the controls, his heart racing. The radar showed a ship approaching fast. Jack's mind raced with fear. Was it the same people who attacked Lyra's family? He told Lyra to hide under the control panel. She obeyed without a word, squeezing into the small space and wrapping the blanket around herself. Jack activated the ship's cloaking device, praying it would work. The enemy ship drew closer. Scanning the area, Jack held his breath, watching the radar as the ship circled them like a hungry predator. For long minutes, they waited, the tension almost too much to bear. Finally, the enemy ship moved away, vanishing into the darkness. Jack let out a shaky breath. Lyra crawled out of her hiding place, her eyes wide with fear. Jack hugged her, telling her softly that she was safe. But inside, he knew their danger was far from over. He had to keep her safe, no matter what. As Lyra looked up at him and whispered, "Dad." Jack realized he had already started to care for her like a real father. And out there in the endless stars, he knew their journey together was just beginning. Jack Rivers kept his hands tight on the controls as his small ship sped through deep space. Lyra, the alien girl, sat close beside him. Clutching her blanket and staring out the window, the memory of the enemy ship still haunted them both. Jack's heart beat faster every time the radar beeped. He had promised to protect Lyra, but he knew the dangers of space were never far behind. He wondered who would chase a child across the stars. And why they wanted her so badly? The ship's fuel was running low. Jack needed to find somewhere safe to land and refuel. He scanned the star maps and found a hidden asteroid belt. It was a dangerous place, but it might be the only place too. Hide. He guided the ship into the field, weaving between giant rocks and swirling dust clouds. The engines groaned under the strain. Lyra watched him with wide eyes, copying every move with her small hands. Jack smiled at her, trying to be brave, even when he felt afraid. Suddenly, a red light flashed on the dashboard. The enemy ship had found them again. Jack's ship rocked as a blast from behind hit the shields. Lyra gasped, holding tightly to the seat. Jack steered hard, dodging between asteroids as laser beams flew past the windows. He knew the enemy ship was faster and stronger, but Jack had one advantage. He knew how to hide. He switched off the main engines, letting the ship drift silently between the rocks. He shut down the lights and whispered to Lyra to stay quiet outside. The enemy ship searched for them. Scanning every shadow, Jack's heart pounded as he watched the scanner. The enemy was so close he could almost hear their engines. For a long moment, Jack and Lyra did not even breathe. The enemy ship moved on, missing them by a few meters. Jack waited until the scanner showed clear, then restarted the engines. Lyra let out a shaky sigh of relief, her eyes still full of fear. They stayed hidden in the asteroid belt for hours. Jack tried to fix a broken engine panel while Lyra handed him tools. He explained each part, teaching her words like wrench and bolt. Lyra listened carefully, eager to help. She was clever and learned fast. Every time Jack taught her something new, she gave him a shy smile. Jack felt a warmth in his heart that he had not known in years, but the fear never left his mind. He knew the enemy would not give up easily. Later, Jack found a hidden cave on a large asteroid. He landed the ship inside, safe from scanners and prying eyes. Jack checked their supplies, worrying about food and water. Lyra watched him with concern. Jack tried to stay positive, telling her stories about Earth. He described the blue sky, green trees, and oceans full of fish. Lyra listened with wonder, closing her eyes and imagining the world Jack spoke about. She tried to say some English words, repeating home and water softly. Jack laughed, happy to see her learning. He realized that teaching her made him feel less alone. It was almost like having a family again. Just as Jack started to relax, the scanner beeped once more. The enemy ship had returned, searching the asteroid belt. Jack's mind raced for a plan. He knew they could not stay hidden forever. He looked at Lyra and said softly, "We have to move." She nodded, trusting him completely. Jack powered up the engines and prepared for a risky escape. He used every trick he knew, turning off the lights, cutting the engines, and floating among the rocks. At the perfect moment, he blasted away from the asteroid, using a burst of power to surprise the enemy. The enemy ship chased them, firing. Again and again, Jack dodged and weaved through the asteroids. Sweat running down his face, Lyra closed her eyes. Holding Jack's hand for courage, Jack pushed the ship to its limits, spinning and turning, Suddenly, he flew straight toward a huge rock. At the last second, he pulled up, just missing the surface. The enemy ship followed, but crashed into the asteroid with a loud explosion. Jack and Lyra watched in silence as the enemy vanished in a cloud of dust. For the first time, they felt safe. Lyra turned to Jack, her eyes shining with gratitude and something new. She whispered, "Dad," for the second time, her voice stronger. Now, Jack smiled and hugged her, feeling proud and surprised. He had saved her, and maybe she had saved him too, as they drifted away from the asteroids. Jack knew their journey was far from over, but together they could face anything the stars would bring. Jack promised Lyra he would always protect her, and as they flew deeper into space, their bond grew stronger with every passing moment. Jack. Rivers stood in the middle of his ship, listening to the hum of the engines. He looked at Lyra, the alien girl who now felt like his daughter. She was sitting on the floor, gently petting a small creature they had found on the asteroid. Jack was amazed at how gentle she was. She smiled at him, her eyes shining bright in the dim light. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just a few days since they had escaped the enemy ship in the asteroid belt. Jack had noticed strange things. Sometimes Lyra seemed to know what was going to happen before it did. She would touch Jack's arm right before something went wrong with the engines. She could sense danger, even when the scanners showed nothing. Jack wondered if it was just luck, or if Lyra had some kind of power one night. Jack burned his hand on a hot engine part. He tried to hide it from Lyra, not wanting her to worry, but Lyra saw the pain in his eyes and came to him. She reached out, her small hand glowing with a soft blue light as she touched his burn. Jack felt the pain fade away. The wound healed right before his eyes. He stared at her, amazed and frightened at the same time. "Lyra," he whispered, "how did you do that?" Lyra looked down, suddenly shy. She shook her head and said nothing. Jack decided not to push her, but he could not forget what he had seen. Later that night, Jack sat in the cockpit, thinking about everything. He knew Lyra was special, and that was probably why the enemy wanted her. He decided to try and talk to her, to learn the truth. He found her in the cargo bay, drawing pictures on a scrap of metal with a broken stylus. He sat beside her and showed her an old photo of his family from Earth. He pointed to the people in the photo, naming each one. Lyra listened, then pointed to herself. She spoke slowly, her English getting better. "My family. Gone," she said, her eyes full of sadness. Jack felt a sharp pain in his chest. He wanted to hug her, to tell her she was safe. Instead, he asked, "Why do they want you, Lyra? Who are you?" Lyra hesitated, then drew a symbol on the metal 3 stars above a crescent moon. Jack didn't recognize it. Lyra tried to explain, "I am Princess Special Blood. They hunt me." Jack's eyes widened in shock. He realized she was not just any alien child. She was part of a royal family, maybe the last of her kind. As Jack thought about what to do next, the ship's alarm suddenly blared. Someone was trying to dock with their ship. Jack grabbed his blaster and told Lyra to hide. He moved quietly through the ship, every sense alert. The airlock hissed, and a tall figure stepped inside. It was an alien bounty hunter, covered in black armor. The bounty hunter raised his weapon, pointing it at Jack. Jack stood his ground, his own blaster shaking in his hand. "Give me the child," the bounty hunter growled, his voice cold and metallic. Jack shook his head, putting himself between the bounty hunter and Lyra's hiding spot. "She's under my protection now," Jack said, trying to sound brave. The bounty hunter fired, and Jack dove behind a crate. The blast scorched the metal where Jack had stood. Jack fired back, but the bounty hunter was too fast. He moved closer, cornering Jack. Suddenly, Lyra crawled out from her hiding place. She stood between Jack and the bounty hunter, her hands glowing blue. The bounty hunter paused, uncertain. Lyra closed her eyes and lifted her hands. A wave of blue energy rushed from her palms, knocking the bounty hunter backward. His weapon flew from his hand, and he crashed into the wall. Jack rushed to grab Lyra. Pulling her close, the bounty hunter scrambled to his feet and ran. Escaping through the airlock into his own ship, Jack slammed the door shut and locked it. He looked down at Lyra, who was shaking and scared. "You saved me," Jack whispered. Lyra nodded, tears running down her cheeks. Jack hugged her tight. Feeling his own eyes burn with emotion, he realized that Lyra's powers were both a blessing and a curse. They kept her alive, but they also made her a target. Jack knew that their journey would only get harder from here. He would have to be smarter, braver, and stronger than ever before. But he was no longer alone. He had Lyra, and she had him. Together, they would face whatever waited for them in the endless stars. Jack Rivers guided his old ship to a quiet planet covered in silver forests and gentle hills. He chose this place because it was hidden and far from busy space routes. He hoped it would give Lyra and himself time to rest and heal. As the ship landed, Lyra pressed her face against the window, amazed by the shimmering trees and soft blue sky. Jack smiled, happy to see wonder in her eyes again. He turned off the engines and opened the door. Fresh air rushed in, cool and sweet. Lyra stepped outside, her bare feet sinking into soft moss. She looked up at Jack, smiling shyly. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Jack set up a small camp near the ship. He built a fire and cooked the last of their supplies. He gave Lyra a bowl of warm soup. She sat beside him, watching the flames dance. They listened to the strange songs of hidden birds. Jack told her stories of Earth, about ice cream, laughter, and playing under the sun. Lyra giggled at his funny faces and tried to repeat some English words. She pointed to herself and said, "Lyra," then pointed at Jack, smiling, "Dad." Jack laughed, feeling pride and something deeper. He realized he cared for her like his own child. The feeling surprised him. But he did not push it away. Over the next few days, they explored the forest together. Jack taught Lyra how to spot safe fruit and build small traps for food. Lyra showed Jack a hidden spring where the water was sweet and clear. They worked together to fix the ship. Jack handed her tools and showed her what to do. Lyra watched closely and copied his actions. Soon, she was helping him repair broken wires and panels. Jack was amazed at how quickly she learned. Sometimes, Lyra used her strange power to heal small cuts and bruises Jack got while working. Jack always thanked her, and she smiled shyly, happy to help. At night, they sat by the fire and watched the stars. Lyra would draw shapes in the dirt, her home. Her lost family, the symbol of 3 stars above a moon. Jack drew pictures of Earth and tried to show her what his home looked like. Lyra listened closely, repeating the names he taught her. Sometimes she would grow quiet, her eyes sad. Jack knew she missed her family. He missed his own family too. But with Lyra beside him, the pain was a little less. One afternoon, Lyra grew weak and pale. She clung to Jack, shivering with cold. Jack checked her temperature and knew something was wrong. He remembered the stories of how different worlds could make aliens sick. Lyra's body was not used to this planet's air or food. Jack felt panic rising in his chest. He held Lyra close and promised to find help. He searched through his supplies, looking for anything that might help her. He tried to remember the old stories about herbal medicines. But nothing seemed to work. Lyra's breathing grew slow and her skin turned even paler, desperate. Jack remembered the hidden spring Lyra had shown him. He carried her there, hoping the water would help. He dipped a cloth in the cool water and placed it on her forehead. Lyra opened her eyes and tried to smile. She whispered a word in her own language. Jack squeezed her hand, feeling helpless. He stayed by her side all night, telling her stories and singing soft songs. He refused to leave her, even for a moment. As dawn broke, Jack noticed a faint glow around Lyra's hands. She placed her hands on her own chest and closed her eyes. The blue light grew brighter, wrapping around her like a blanket. Jack watched in amazement as her breathing grew stronger. The color returned to her face. Within an hour, Lyra sat up, looking tired but safe. She smiled weakly at Jack. Jack hugged her, close tears of relief in his eyes. "You're so brave," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her voice quiet. "Dad's safe." Lyra safe, the danger had not passed. But Jack knew now that Lyra was stronger than he had realized. She had a power inside her, something rare and beautiful. But Jack also knew others would come searching for her again. He promised himself. He would never let her down. He would protect her, no matter what. Together, they continued to fix the ship, gather food, and learn new words. Their bond grew stronger every day. Jack sometimes wondered if he could ever return to Earth, but deep inside he knew his home was no longer a place. It was this new family he had found among the stars. As the days passed, Lyra's laughter filled the forest. Jack felt hope returning to his heart. Whatever dangers waited out there in the universe, he and Lyra would face them together. For now, they had each other, and that was enough. The days on the Silver Forest planet passed quietly at first. Jack and Lyra became used to the gentle sounds of birds and the bright blue sky. For a short time, it felt like they could finally relax, but Jack never let his guard down. He always checked the scanners and watched the skies for any sign of danger. He knew they were only safe until someone found them. One evening, as the sky turned pink, the ship's alarm suddenly blared. Jack rushed to the cockpit, his heart pounding. On the screen, he saw two ships entering the planet's orbit. He didn't need to guess who they were. The enemy had found them again. Jack ran to Lyra, who was picking flowers near the camp. He grabbed her hand, eyes wide with fear. "It's time to hide," Jack said quickly. Lyra nodded and followed him back to the ship. They packed their supplies and hid inside the cargo hold. Jack listened as the enemy ships landed nearby through the small window. He saw armored aliens marching into the forest. They carried strange weapons and moved like hunters. Jack pulled Lyra close, whispering to stay quiet. The enemy searched the forest, shouting orders in a harsh language. Jack's mind raced. He needed a plan. He thought about running to the mountains, but the ships would spot them from the sky. He thought about fighting, but there were too many enemies. Jack's only chance was to use the ship's old defense system. He told Lyra to stay hidden and crawled through a narrow tunnel to reach the control panel. Jack pressed the buttons to activate the ship's shields and turrets. The ancient machinery groaned to life, lights flickering in the darkness. Outside, the enemy saw the defenses and opened fire. Blasts shook the ship, dust raining down from the ceiling. Jack gritted his teeth and fired back, aiming the turrets at the armored aliens. The battle raged around the small ship. Jack's hands shook as he fought, thinking only of protecting Lyra. Suddenly, the power flickered and the shields started to fail. The enemy was too strong, and Jack's ship was old and tired. He heard footsteps and the Holtha aliens were trying to break inside. Jack ran back to Lyra, who was trembling in the dark. He hugged her close, whispering that he would never leave her. The sound of metal being cut grew louder. The door to the cargo hold started to glow hot. Jack stood in front of Lyra, his blaster ready. He knew he could not win, but he would not give up. He told Lyra to run if he told her, but she shook her head, refusing to leave him. The door burst open and the enemy rushed in. Jack fired, but was quickly knocked down. The armored leader raised a weapon at Jack. Lyra screamed, running to Jack's side. As the enemy reached for her, Lyra closed her eyes and focused. A deep blue light began to shine from her hands. Brighter than ever before, the enemy stopped. Shielding their eyes, Lyra stood tall, the blue light spreading from her hands and filling the room. Jack watched in awe as the light flowed around him, warm and strong. The enemy leader shouted and fired. But the blue light blocked every blast. Lyra's power grew, forming a glowing barrier between Jack and the attackers. The enemies tried to push through, but the light held them back. Suddenly, a wave of energy burst from Lyra, knocking the aliens out of the ship and into the forest. The blue light faded and Lyra collapsed into Jack's arms. Exhausted, Jack held her close, tears streaming down his face. He whispered how proud he was of her. Lyra smiled weakly and whispered, "Dad's safe. Lyra safe." Jack knew she had saved them both. He also knew that her power was no longer a secret. Others would come, hoping to catch her and use her gifts. But in that moment, he was only grateful that they were alive. Outside, the forest was quiet again. The enemy ships began to lift off. Retreating into the sky, Jack and Lyra watched from the window as their attackers fled. He knew the danger wasn't over, but they had won this fight together. Jack promised Lyra they would find a new place, somewhere even safer, no matter what happened. He would never let her go. As the stars blinked above the quiet forest, Jack and Lyra held each other close. They were not just a crew, they were a family. Together, they were ready for whatever the universe would bring next. The smoke from the final battle drifted slowly above the silver forest. Jack Rivers sat on the cold ground, Lyra cradled in his arms. The blue light from her hands had faded, but the warmth in Jack's heart remained. He stroked her hair, whispering soft words of comfort. For a moment, the universe was quiet and still. Jack felt the weight of everything they had survived pressing down on him. The enemy ships were gone, flying away to warn others or hide their failure. The little camp was broken, but Jack and Lyra were alive. Lyra's strength amazed Jack, but he could see the fight had drained her. She leaned against him, eyes closed. Trusting him completely, Jack looked at the horizon. Wondering where they could go next, they could not stay here, not after what happened. More enemies might come, drawn by the power Lyra carried, but Jack knew they had to move forward. Together, he gently helped Lyra to her feet. They walked back to the old ship, moving slowly under the alien sky. The ship was battered and scorched, but still able to fly. Jack repaired what he could, and Lyra helped with quiet determination every time Jack doubted himself. He looked at Lyra's hopeful face. He remembered how alone he once felt, floating in the darkness. Now, with Lyra by his side, he felt stronger than ever. Before leaving, Jack and Lyra said goodbye to the new friends they had made on the planet. A family of local beings brought them food and water, thanking Jack for protecting their home. The smallest child hugged Lyra, giving her a flower as a gift. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude and sadness. She pressed the flower into Jack's hand, as if promising not to forget. Jack promised the family they would always remember this place. It was the first home they had shared. If only for a short time, as the ship lifted off, Jack set a course away from crowded worlds. He did not know exactly where they would go. He only knew that they would travel together in the silence of space. Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat. She wore the flower from the forest in her hair. Her hands played with the controls, learning quickly. Jack taught her more words, more stories. Sometimes she would laugh and call him Dad with pride. Sometimes she would look serious and ask about the stars. Jack told her the truth: he did not have all the answers, but he promised he would always stay by her side, no matter what. Days turned into weeks as they explored new worlds and quiet moons. They visited forgotten stations where Jack traded old ship parts for food. He kept Lyra hidden, always watching for trouble. Together, they learned how to survive in the shadows. Each day, Jack saw Lyra's courage grow. She was no longer just a scared child. She was strong, clever, and full of hope. But Jack also saw how much she needed him. She trusted him, not just as a captain, but as her father. One quiet night, Jack stood on the observation deck, staring at the endless stars. Lyra joined him, wrapping her small arms around his waist. She looked up at him and whispered, "Dad, are we safe now?" Jack knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. He told her, "We are as safe as we can be, as long as we are together." Lyra smiled, her fear melting away. Jack knew there would always be danger, but he was ready to face it. He made a promise. To Lyra father's promise, he would protect her, teach her, and never leave her alone. As they journeyed through the galaxy, Jack and Lyra found new adventures. They helped lost travelers, rescued others in need. Jack's reputation grew. People began to whisper about the human with the alien daughter who was brave and kind. But Jack did not care about stories or legends. He cared about the quiet moments, sharing food, learning new words, laughing together. Under strange skies, in time, Jack realized he did not miss Earth as much as he thought. He had found his true home, not in a place, but in the bond he shared with Lyra. Lyra's past was full of pain, but her future was full of hope. Jack was proud to call himself her father. As they sailed among the stars, Lyra looked up, smiling. She whispered again, "Dad." Her voice full of trust and love. Jack hugged her close, looking out into the endless night. No matter what came next, Jack knew they would face it as a family. Together, they would write their own story. A father and his daughter, lost and found in the stars.